What's going on, guys? I'm Maze, here with my review of the latest Pokemon Sun and Moon anime episode. Episode 64, Ash and Passimian, Touchdown of Friendship. With that title now said though, get relaxed everybody, as I will now jump right into this episode review. So the episode begins off with Ash walking down the market, meeting with the old lady who then discovers that Litten has evolved. And although this is a small detail, I like and respect this scene a lot, as of course this old lady was pretty much Litten's only friend back in the days when it was a wild Pokemon, so to get a scene on screen of her learning of its evolution is a nice way to remind the audience of their friendship and the fact that Litten evolved. Really nicely done, anime creators. Regardless of that though, a group of Pokemon known as Passimian then accidentally hit Ash in the face with a fruit, as they were trying to save it from another group of Passimian, this group having orange on their forehead, whereas the ones who had hit Ash had green on their forehead. But anyway, the two groups then start to fight over the fruit in a game of rugby. However, one of them gets knocked out, and when the fruit lands back to Ash, he gives it to the orange Passimians, which makes them happy and leave, whereas the green ones were left feeling sad. Officer Jenny then comes running to Ash as she heard of this commotion and takes the knocked up Passimian with Ash to the Pokemon Center. A couple hours later, it's revealed that the Passimian will be okay. The next day though, Ash is telling his classmates about this story when he's passing Rowlet back and forth to Lana as a game, which is just brilliant and funny. However, Professor Kukui then overhears this story and describes that the game of rugby is actually tradition for Passimian. Basically, whoever has the fruit is now the boss of the whole pack of Passimian in their home area, and also reveals that the orange four-headed Passimian are from Akala Island, whereas the green ones are from Melimeli Island. Ash then starts to feel bad when learning this and decides to go check up on the knocked up Passimian after school, as he used to be the boss before these Akala Passimian. However, when he got to their home area with the help of Officer Jenny, the one who got knocked out, who's now revealed to be called Tiny, and his friends are depressed about the situation and don't want to fight back for the boss title. Ash feels like he can't ignore them, so the next day, he decides to become this nightmare fuel, so he can fight back against the other island Passimian to get the boss title back for Tiny. He also starts to act like a Passimian throughout the holiday at school, which was just so weird to watch, but I'll give more of my thoughts on that later. After school though, Ash goes back to the Passimian home area and tries to show Tiny and the others that he is willing to fight for them. However, they couldn't care less. But another Passimian then comes up and wants to play rugby with Ash. And this is where multiple Passimians then start to join in the fun too. Tiny and his friends notice that everybody is having fun and decides to join in, then performing a cool trick to get the fruit high up in the air after Ash had thrown it to them. This actually gets them motivated to try and actually get the boss title back from the Akala Passimians, as they now had this strategy that they did. When the Akala Passimians arrive back to the home area, they do indeed challenge them, and even Ash decides to join in the game with Tiny. And well, in the actual game, Tiny's team was performing good at first. However, the Akala ones then got the upper hand, which is where the other random Melimeli Passimians then decide to help Tiny, which then gives Tiny the chance to perform the trick with his friends, which won them the game. Overall though, it was actually pretty fun to watch this match, really nicely made. Regardless of my thoughts on that though, the Akala Passimians then go back to their own home, and the Melimeli Passimians then actually decide to give Ash the boss title due to how he really wants to help them, which was a really funny ending to this episode. It got even more funnier in the Poké-Problem extra scene though, where all the Passimians then charged to Professor Kukui's house, as that's where Ash lived. Ah, brilliant. With that story now said though, let's now move on to my overall thoughts of this episode. Firstly, for the story, it felt like a classic filler episode you would find in another series of Pokemon due to how simple the story actually was. AKA, two groups of Pokemon fight, whether they be the same species or not, and Ash decides to help out. So it's nothing too special. However, unlike the other episodes we would find in other series, this one stands out more to me. This being because obviously 1, it's the newer episode, and 2, I just loved how they portrayed the Passimian. Passimian, when you first see its design, looks like a rugby Pokemon, and it even states it in the Pokédex, I believe. Oh, if you're American, then that's football to you. I forgot to mention that earlier on. But hey, better late than never. Anyway, to see the anime creators then make the Passimian fight in a rugby manner was just a great way to show its characteristics through its design to me. We also saw this manner in the home too, which shows what their overall lifestyle is, and I really like seeing that too. Just overall seeing how they are obsessed with rugby was just really nice. And of course, like I explained earlier, the final rugby match was nice to watch too. Finally, for Passimian's portrayal in this episode though, let's talk about the main Passimian, Tiny, the Pokemon who Ash was actually trying to help the most by getting its boss title back. To me, Tiny was just meh personality wise, apart from what I explained with the rugby. But you know what, I will say that the anime creator showed emotion through its eyes very nicely. We got nice close-up shots on them too, which is how I managed to identify this and how it feels. I'm guessing the creator's intention was to make you feel sorry for Tiny too when it was in the sad state. So, really nicely done by creators. But yep, overall Tiny to me was just meh, but it did have nice emotion. Anyway, let's now move on to Ash's character. Of course, like we saw, he decided to dress like a Passimian in this episode so he could blend in with the other Passimians and even act like them, which made me see Ash in a weird way within this episode. But you gotta admit, it does show his characteristics well. He cares for Pokemon deeply and goes to any extreme just to help them, which this exactly showed in this episode, but in a more crazy manner. However, I can respect it at least, due to knowing Ash for all this time. Hopefully if you found this weird, you can at least respect what the creators were going for. Regardless of that though, I do want to mention that some people thought Ash would catch Passimian in this episode, based on the first summary and preview, and I can see why. However, I didn't want him to, or did not expect it to happen. Back in 2017, I did want it to happen. So what happened to my thoughts here? Well, it's mainly because of Poipole and Alolan Sandshrew. Like I've said multiple times on this channel now, recent merchandise suggests Ash will catch both, so I'm confident he will actually will, and I believe there are better choices for him anyway now. Plus, finally, the preview showed the Passimians in groups, which Ash usually doesn't take a Pokemon away from its group, and overall, it just looked like filler. I thought I'll give my thoughts on that, as I know somebody would have commented if I thought Ash would catch or not catch Passimian, or if I wanted it to happen. Finally, for this story section though, this episode did contain quite a bit of comedy, most of it being Ash getting hit in the face by a fruit, and him acting like a Passimian I guess. However, although I don't like this, I can respect what the writers were going for, and we just gotta keep on remembering that the target audience for this show is kids. I will admit though, I did really like the slow-mo shot of Ash getting hit in the face by the fruit. It made it look so epic, all because of that one effect. And finally, like I said in the storytelling section, I found the Rowlet game and overall episode ending to be funny. But that's just it, everything else I didn't really like. With my thoughts on this story now said though, let's now move on to the animation and music aspects of this episode. Firstly, for the animation, it was good throughout the whole episode. However, my favourite highlights have to be the fast movements from Passimian and Ash in the final rugby match. It was really nicely made. As always, I like the sunset that the anime creators show, they always look so beautiful. And finally, the episode did have nice camera angles, which I already explained a couple, so that's all I'll say for this section. As for the music aspects though, it was nice in this episode. My favourite highlights mostly coming from the final rugby match, the Sun and Moon Wild Pokemon theme and Champion theme. They surprisingly fit, and as always, are just so amazing to listen to. With everything I've said in this video though, I've decided to give this episode a rating of 6 out of 10, at best. I think it may be generous, but the episode's not bad altogether. Just a classic filler, or should I say slice of life here, and it's fun also. However, let me know in the comments down below what you actually thought of this episode though, I'd love to hear. But that pretty much wraps up for this video now, so if you enjoyed, then be sure to leave a like and a subscribe for future Pokemon content, it helps out a ton. For now, this is Entity Maze, signing out, thanks for watching.